Hi, it's Paul from selfoutforlife.com, and today I'm going to cover how to overcome social anxiety. So what is social anxiety? Well, it's a fear of social environments and your ability to perform well in those environments. So it's a fear of being judged, being watched, being negatively evaluated, being rejected, being embarrassed, or being scrutinized in those situations. And the symptoms of social anxiety include being afraid to ask questions, or being afraid of talking to people that you don't know and meeting new people. Or perhaps it's believing that people don't like you or that they're better than you in some way. Or it's avoiding social events, or not liking being in crowds, or being uncomfortable when you're talking to authority figures such as your manager at work. It's also when you mess something up when you're being watched. So you have a skill or activity that you're normally very good at, but as soon as you have an audience or someone watching over you, you perform it more poorly than you normally would. So it's like a form of performance anxiety. Social anxiety is also when you're very quiet in meetings and you don't speak up, or when you don't like being the center of attention. So maybe when you're doing a presentation or when it's your birthday. And it's also avoiding difficult phone calls. So maybe you need to make a phone call to follow up on an interview, or maybe you want to ask someone out on a date. It's avoiding those tricky phone calls, really due to a fear of rejection. So where does this social anxiety come from, and why do we have it? Well, I believe we need to go back to tribal days. So when we lived as part of a group or a tribe. And at that time, our life depended on being part of that tribe. So if we were rejected by that tribe and had to go and live on our own, we wouldn't survive. So unconsciously, we believe that if we're rejected, that's a life or death situation. But of course, that's no longer the case now. But our unconscious mind still thinks as if it is the case. So how many people suffer from social anxiety? Well, it's around about 12%. And I would say it's 12% that suffer from more severe social anxiety, where it really starts to impact their life, their happiness, their ability to do things, and their ability to get on with life and get on with their careers as well. I think there's more people who actually suffer from social anxiety in certain specific cases, but in other situations they're absolutely fine. So whichever one you are, whether it's more severe or fairly mild, this video will help you. Now, social anxiety and anxiety in general are created and maintained by four components. So these are physiological, cognitive, emotional, and behavioral. So I'll go into each of these in turn right now. So the first component is physiological. So this is when you have a racing heart, or you have sweaty palms, or you have butterflies in your stomach. It's when you have shaky hands or a shaky voice, perhaps when you're presenting, or when you feel faint or you start blushing. And the thing about the physiological aspects is that you feel it and other people can potentially see it, often a lot less than you think they can, but potentially people can notice some of those symptoms. And the physiological component happens in the social anxiety situation only. So the second component is cognitive. So cognitive is really just a technical name for thoughts and what is going on in your mind. So this is about the negative thoughts and the excessive thoughts, the rumination that's going on in your mind before the social anxiety situation and also during it as well. And I also believe it's about how you imagine the situation. So if you're imagining it going badly, maybe you're imagining flunking a presentation. Now, the key thing about cognitions or cognitive side of it is that this happens both before the social anxiety situation, so when you're thinking about it and ruminating about it, and also during the social anxiety situation as well. Now, the third component is emotional. So the thoughts and how you're imagining this in your mind lead to certain negative emotions. So this could be excessive self-consciousness in social situations. So you're very aware of yourself and you can't get out of your own head. It could be worrying for days, weeks or months about a certain social situation that's coming up. It could be that fear of being watched or being judged by others, or a fear of embarrassment, or a fear of someone else noticing your nervousness. Now, the fourth component is behavioral, and this happens in the social anxiety situation. So it's doing or not doing a certain behavior that other people might notice. So some of those behaviors could include avoiding eye contact, or fluffing up certain words, or being quiet in meetings. So these are all things that other people could potentially notice. It could be messing up when someone's watching you, so I mentioned that earlier. Or it could be avoiding certain situations, so avoiding parties, avoiding presentations, or avoiding making difficult phone calls. It can also be using alcohol or some kind of drug to soothe your nerves before you go into a social anxiety situation. So I'm now going to cover some ways to help you overcome social anxiety, and these ways will address the 4 components that I talked about a minute ago, which, to recap, are physiological, cognitive, emotional and behavioral. So the first way is to breathe slowly and deeply. So this is going to calm the physiological symptoms, so the sweaty palms, the blushing, the rapid heart rate, those kind of things. Because when you're anxious, you tend to breathe quickly, and this can result in over-breathing. So this is when you're breathing in too much oxygen in relation to the carbon dioxide, and this can throw your body off balance. And when that happens, this increases the physical symptoms, so especially your heart rate and also muscle tension as well, but also some of those other physical symptoms of anxiety that I mentioned a moment ago. So this is an in-the-moment way to reduce those physical symptoms. You could almost call it a band-aid really, because it's something you do in the moment as a way to reduce those symptoms. And you can use this while you're getting better at some of the other ways that I'm going to cover later in this video to help you feel less anxious in those situations in the first place. So this is a good place to start. So the next few ways that I'm about to cover will address the cognitive component and will also indirectly influence the emotional component as well. So cognitions is simply a posh word for thoughts. So the next way is to change negative thoughts. So negative thoughts lead to fear and anxiety, and in this case social anxiety. So the first step to that is to identify what those negative thoughts are. So let's use an example. Let's say you want to talk to new people, and the kind of thoughts you have at the moment are, I don't know what to say. That's a common one. Or another one would be, what if they don't like me? Or what if they find me boring? So once you've identified what those thoughts are, and what you might want to do is write those thoughts down, so journal those thoughts. So once you know what those thoughts are, you then want to analyze and change those thoughts. So you can do this by asking questions. So to address the first thought, I don't know what to say. Well, one way around that is to have some stock questions ready before you approach that person. So there could be simple questions about, their career, what they do for a living, about holidays, about hobbies, about their kids. Most people will very happily talk about those things for a few minutes. So you're challenging that question by actually coming up with some things that you can ask if at any point you don't know what to say. Now the second one was, what if they don't like me? Okay, well an alternative way of thinking about that could be, well if they don't like me, then I'll congratulate myself for trying, and then I'll move on to someone else. Okay, so you can see how that's a much more positive question that's going to make you feel a lot less anxious. Or the third one I had was, what if they find me boring? Okay, so a way to challenge and change that could be to something like, I know that I'm interesting, and that will come across to other like-minded people. So again, you can see how that's going to feel a lot better. So really it's a case of analysing the negative thoughts and then coming up with an alternative thought. It doesn't have to be super positive, but just a thought that gives you more options and more possibilities. So number 3 is to challenge unhelpful thinking styles. So this is similar to the previous one, but it's more around the underlying thoughts and beliefs that create different negative thoughts in different situations. Often there's some underlying principles behind those thoughts. So if you can start to address these, this can often be more effective. And these underlying principles are known as cognitive distortions or thinking traps. And I'm going to cover 3 of them right now. So the first one is mind reading. So mind reading is knowing what other people are thinking when there's no evidence to prove it. So examples could be, she hates me, or others think I'm stupid. And the question you really got to ask is, how do you know? It's impossible to read another person's mind. We have no way of knowing exactly what someone else is thinking. And so the way around this is to really ask questions. So, how do I know that she hates me? Or how do I know that other people think I'm stupid? Or what did this person say or do that makes me think that? Now, often you won't be able to answer these questions, and that's a good thing. That means that you can't find the evidence to prove that those thoughts are true. So now you know they're not true and you can let them go. So the second thinking trap is fortune telling. This is predicting the future in a negative way. This is believing that the future will turn out badly. So some examples could be, I know I'll mess up my interview, or no one is going to talk to me at this party. So again, you want to question those thoughts. So for the first one, you could ask yourself, do I know for sure that I will mess up this interview? And for the other one, you could say, no one? How do I know that? How do I know that no one is going to talk to me at this party? So the third thinking trap is catastrophizing. So this is thinking or imagining worst case scenarios. So it's magnifying errors, magnifying fears, and magnifying imperfections. So an example of this could be, if I flunk this presentation, my life is over. So again, you want to question this. So you could question it by saying, really? Or you could say, what exactly will change in my life if I flunk this presentation? It's highly unlikely you're going to lose your job over it, so really it's probably no big deal. Or you could ask the opposite positive question, which is, what would happen to my life if I did an amazing presentation? So those three cognitive distortions or thinking traps particularly influence social anxiety and have a negative effect on it. There are 9 other thinking traps, and I've covered those in another video which will appear up here right now. So number 4 is to change your internal self-talk. So what you say to yourself and how you say it influences the energy that you give out, and other people pick up on that unconsciously. So if you're regularly saying these sorts of things to yourself in social situations, such as people don't like me, or I don't think I'm interesting or funny, or I can't wait to get out of here, or this is really uncomfortable, or this is really terrible, you can see how that can negatively influence your energy. Now this is similar to the second way that I covered earlier on changing negative thoughts. So you still want to analyze those thoughts and come up with new positive thoughts, but the key here is you want to then repeat those new thoughts over and over again so that they become positive internal dialogue or positive internal self-talk. So again, I'll give you some examples of how you could change these. So people don't like me, you could change that to, I am a good person and I know that some people will like me. And I don't think I'm interesting or funny could be changed to, I know that I'm interesting and this will come across to other people. Or I can't wait to get out of here could be changed to, I'll enjoy this social situation and I'll make new friends and I'll stay here until the end. And for this is really uncomfortable, the alternative self-talk could be, I felt uncomfortable before, but I know that when I take action, it feels great, so I'm going to do it anyway. And the last one, this is terrible. This one might be better with a question. So how exactly is this terrible? And what could I do to make it better? So sometimes the positive self-talk is a question. Now, when changing self-talk, it's not just about changing the actual words and phrases that you say to yourself. It's also about changing the tone and the volume as well. So with negative self-talk, it often sounds like it's coming from a teacher or a parent. It's very authoritarian. So what you can do is change it to a softer tone and change the volume. So let's have a go at this right now. Just think about any kind of negative thought, ideally a social anxiety one, but it could be anything. And what I want you to do now is just in your mind, just turn the volume down on that thought. Just imagine you have a remote control and just imagine turning down the volume and just making it really quiet in your mind. And then try changing the tone. So if it seems like a very authoritarian teacher or parent, change it to be like your best friend saying it, or a comic or someone funny saying it. If it sounds like it's a male voice, change it to a female voice. If it's a female voice, maybe try changing it to a male voice. And just notice what happens. Now you can change the tone and volume of positive self-talk as well. So think of some positive self-talk and make it sound like it's Tony Robbins that's saying it, or some other person that you really admire and respect. Make the self-talk louder, make it sound more exciting. Now when you do this regularly, when you change the tonality and when you repeat positive self-talk regularly to yourself, this increases your belief. This increases your belief that others do like you. It increases your belief that you're confident in social situations. And then as a result, you start to have a different energy, you start to have a different presence about you, and you have more confident body language. So people pick up on this. So people pick up on the positive energy and they notice your new positive body language. Now, when you use positive self-talk before and definitely during any social situation, then I'm confident it will make a huge difference as you feel more confident and you come across much more confident as well. So the fifth way to help you overcome social anxiety is to use creative visualization. So we've already addressed the thoughts and how to change those, but there's an important component which is your imagination, because you're already probably imagining certain social situations going badly, and that's what's causing the social anxiety. So instead you want to start to imagine or visualize it going perfectly. So for example, imagining a presentation going perfectly, going really well, or imagining having a great conversation with a new person, or imagining going to your manager to ask for a pay rise and getting it. So when using creative visualization, besides seeing the situation going perfectly, you want to bring in other senses as well. So notice what you can hear. If you're doing a presentation, perhaps it's hearing the audience clapping at the end. Also notice what you're saying to yourself. So notice the positive self-talk, and also how you're feeling. So notice any kind of positive feelings that are coming in as well. And if relevant, you can also bring in taste and touch as well. And also when visualizing, make sure you're visualizing on a really big screen. So the bigger the better. And to learn more about creative visualization, you can watch a video that will appear up here right now. So I've addressed the physical symptoms of social anxiety with the deep breathing exercise. I've then covered several ways to help deal with the thoughts behind social anxiety, and we've also covered creative visualization as a way of imagining situations that made you feel socially anxious in a more positive way. So we're now on to ways to change the behavior or change the actions that you take and reduce social anxiety that way. So overall, we're now up to number 6, which is to focus more on others. So whenever you can take the focus off you, whenever you can feel less in your head, that's always a good thing. And that's because your brain cannot think about you and other people at the same time. So when you're focusing more on other people, that also quietens down that internal dialogue, that internal self-talk that I mentioned earlier as well. So the way to do this is to be curious and generally interested in other people. And a great way to do that is to ask questions. And I mentioned this earlier. So ask questions around their work and their career, holidays. I always find that's a really good one. Hobbies. Ask about their kids as well. And this is good for you because you can really listen to their answers instead of being in your own head. It's also really good for them because most people like talking about their favorite subject, which is themselves. But it's important that when you do this, that you really do listen to what they're saying and resist the temptation to start thinking about what's in your head rather than listening to what they're saying. That's really important as well. But also you don't want to overdo it with the questions. I've done this a few times in the past myself where I've asked so many questions it's almost seemed like I'm almost interrogating the other person. It's more like an interview. So while you're asking questions, you want to be sharing a little bit about yourself as well. So again, if it helps, you can have a few things already prepared that you can say, but where possible, just try and trust that you'll naturally come up with a few things to share as you're doing that. So also when with other people, you want to be totally present. So what does that mean? It means that you're not thinking or worrying about what to say next, or annoyed or regretting something that you've just said. Also focus on making other people feel better, so compliments is a great way to do that. And remember that other people are socially anxious too. If it's about 12% of the population, then 1 in 9 people you talk to are likely to also be suffering from something similar to you. So number 7 is to set goals and intentions. Now, most people go into social situations with no specific goal in mind, and then they wonder why they come out of it feeling socially anxious or feeling exactly the same as they did last time. So they're not making any progress. So starting to set some goals and intentions in these situations can really help. So let me give you some examples of ones that could work for you. So one could be, I'm going to talk to 5 new people at the office party, or I'm going to find something new from 4 people that I already know, or I'm going to feel good about myself regardless of what happens. So whatever happens externally, I'm going to feel good about myself anyway. Or it could be, I am going to ask a question in the next meeting. Or it could be to always say hi to people in authority when you see them in the corridor at work. Now, each time you achieve one of these little goals, it's important to reward yourself. So at the office party, this could be getting another drink or getting a bit of food from the buffet. So number 8, and the last one, is to face your fears gradually. Remember that it's fear that drives social anxiety, whether that's fear of being rejected, judged, negatively evaluated, or being embarrassed. And the key is to confront these fears. So like any fear, you really want to confront it, because when you do that, you get that feeling of elation and aliveness that comes from overcoming the fear. And also it's going to help you achieve success as well. And when you avoid fears, you tend to get that feeling of regret. And also it makes it more scary in your mind. So the fear gets bigger and bigger. And when you do that, the social anxiety tends to keep going or even get worse over time. However, I don't recommend that you tackle the fears head on. Instead, break them down into baby steps that will seem more doable. And the great thing about that is each time you achieve one of these baby steps, your confidence begins to improve, and then it feels easier to take on the next step. So let me give you some examples then of how this could happen. So your first baby step could be to talk to someone new with a friend. So you have someone else with you. So that could be your first baby step. The second baby step could be to talk to the person next to you on a table. So maybe it's a social event and you're having dinner on a table and you make a point of talking to the person that's either side of you. The next fear could be talking to someone that's not talking to anyone. So again, it could be someone like a social event at work and there's someone that's not talking to anyone. So you go up and you talk to them because they're probably going to be quite an easy bet. They're going to appreciate having someone else talking to them. Once you've done that, you could try going up to a group of 2 people that are already talking and just listening to them and smiling and maybe joining in if it feels appropriate. Then you could join a group of 2 and add to the conversation in some way. Then it could be joining a larger group, and then maybe it's talking to someone from the opposite sex if that's a big fear for you. So you can see how you can break it down into much smaller steps. So think about what your biggest social anxiety fear is, and then see how you can break that down into manageable steps. And then maybe each week or each time you go out in a social situation, see if you can achieve one of those little fears and overcome it. And I think that will really help you overcome social anxiety. Remember that it takes time and practice to overcome social anxiety, and you want to do it one step at a time. So even with this video, there's lots of different ways I've shown you. So take it easily, take it one step at a time, work on one particular approach, get comfortable with that, and then work on to another approach. And it doesn't take long when you act consistently on something before you really start to notice the difference and notice the benefits. So these were my 8 ways to help you overcome social anxiety today. I hope you found them useful, and I do encourage you to start applying these to your life right now. Now, if you enjoyed this video, do give it a like, give it a thumbs up, and do leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. And also subscribe to this channel and click the bell notification. That way you will always be notified whenever I release future videos just like this one. So I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I look forward to sharing more great content with you very soon. Bye for now.